this time we're talking about the animated movie Jin-Roh from 1999. This is a film that I wanted to show Matt and Gil. It's an animated movie Japanese anime movie that I like, and I thought it would be a good one to share just because I think it's very accessible to people, even if they are not anime fans. It's pretty down to earth, and it's not about giant robots or magic or anything like that.
Was there anything particular about this movie that stood out to you as far as whether it's the recommendation or specifically discussing it as well?
I guess maybe two things. It had been, even though it's been sitting on my shelf for years, I think I had only watched it twice, and it had probably been, I'm guessing, probably about 15 years ago or something when I last watched it, maybe 10, but definitely a long time. And I had been thinking about watching it for quite a while, and we started doing this podcast thing, and we started talking about coming up with suggestions, and this just sort of seemed like a movie that the content, the subject matter in the movie is certainly pretty relevant right now, even though the movie itself is a kind of alternate universe 1950s thing. But with all the riots and police stuff and everything.
Yeah, and I guess Matt, you mentioned that you came across that there was a live action remake of this recently. That was
Yeah, a South Korean production that came out in 2018. It is definitely not like a faithful remake. First of all, it's 30 minutes longer than the anime, but the design of particularly the costumes are spot on. I mean, exactly out of the anime. And also, as Jason was saying, one thing that I found interesting about the anime was that it was an alternate universe kind of thing where people are still using Lugers, whereas apparently the remake is set like 30 years into the future from now. So that's so
Yeah,
definitely
just
not
to
a faith.
clarify, I'm not an expert on this. I don't know a whole lot about it, but my understanding is that the creator of this thing made this. I'm assuming in manga form, like in book form or something like that, and it's a multi-part thing, like probably four, five, six stories or something of that nature.
Right.
And for the longest time, it was not adapted as anything. And then I
Uh,
guess I'm pretty sure this was a standalone movie that one guy decided to make. Obviously, with that person's permission. But they made this movie as like a little standalone thing. It's not a direct adaptation of the books at all. It's just kind of like taking a lot of the same stories, and I guess it's similar to one of them or something like that, but the ending is totally different, and the content, the story is different, and everything. And this was, I guess, what they had for a long time. And
yeah.
then over the years, so they made several live action stories off of those comics, those books,
Okay.
but I guess none of them are really connected to this. Like, you wouldn't consider this a prequel or a sequel or even connected directly to them because they're just different. And then finally, because of the success and the popularity of this anime, years later, they did make an actual Jin-Roh story that's very similar to this one in live action. And I don't know how well it was received. My understanding is it's pretty mixed. But the one you're referring to, one of the things that I think people were a little upset about was the fact that they switched it to Korea and that they made it in the future instead of in the past. And but other than that, supposedly the story is pretty similar. I've never seen it, so I can't really comment on that other than that's my understanding of how those live action films kind of connect, but not really.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, in a nutshell, I guess so. Post World War II, in this story, Japan has become a very fascist military state, basically, and as you'd expect, the people are rising up in protest, violent protest against the establishment on a regular basis. And in the opening voiceover of the movie, they explain that years before this, the government more or less created this thing called the Capitol Police, where they're just these like elite soldiers with heavily armed soldiers that are there to basically keep the peace, more or less. But they're very, very violent, and they kind of just sort of take the law into their own hands. And as the movie starts, this has been the reality for a while, and it's just you see the police and mobs fighting against each other, and you see an underground resistance. They're basically doing what most people would pretty much consider terrorist type activities, and it's kind of a big violent struggle back and forth. And at the opening scene, you see this girl who's a courier for the terrorist group, you could say, or the resistance, or whatever you want to call them. I think they call them the sect or something like that, if I remember correctly. They even refer to them as Red Riding Hoods, but they just these young women who they use to ferry weapons and explosives around from group to group, and they're going through the tunnels in the sewers underneath the city, and the Wolf Brigade, or the Cerberus as they call it, these Capitol Police people are rounding people up and killing them down in the sewers. And the main character Fusei encounters a girl who blows herself up, and he fails to shoot her in time. And pretty much the rest of the movie is him kind of like struggling with his decision, and a lot of guilt and various feelings that he's going through as he begins a relationship with the girl's sister. It's a rather odd relationship, but that's what happens. And yeah, it's kind of all about them and coming to terms with things. And there's a few twists and turns in the story, and it's kind of about a bunch of stuff like political intrigue and conspiracies and all that stuff.
Yeah, I can tell you, like my general reaction to it while watching it,
Yeah, what'd you think?
it was very slow paced. It had like a very bombastic start, like the starting sequences. But it's funny because I started watching it and I was thinking how anime is basically Japan's way of making big action movies. Because there's no money for live action movies of that sort with a lot of explosions and blood and all this stuff. Also, who knows, maybe censorship. They kind of get away with it by doing that, similar to the porn part. I think it's a similar thing. It's just an easy way to get around, I guess, money issues and maybe censorship issues. And then after 10, 20 minutes, it's basically like a fairy tale slash intrigue slash spy almost story, or at least you don't know who's on whose side. So I was surprised that it took that turn, that even though there's more action sequences throughout the movie, it's very heavy on the moment to moment scenes. It's not purely action per se.
It's
There's a lot
definitely
of
not, I wouldn't even call it an action movie, I don't think.
Exactly. Some of the reviews, they actually do say like action this, action that, but it's
Hmm.
actually it's heavy in the beginning and it's heavy towards the end, and it's pretty bloody at times. But a lot of it, there's some really slow paced, talky or non-talky, sensitive scenes. One of my favorite scenes in it is the dream sequence, which some of the dream sequences that I think it's probably one of the strongest things about the movie. But overall, my impression of it, as far as recommending it, it's mixed. I'm not sure if it's the best anime that that I would recommend, especially as coming from out of nowhere. It's very thought through. It's very complex, maybe a bit too much with what's going on there. But it's enjoyable, and it definitely breaks the mold as far as just showing that an animated new movie can just be that, which is what anime is. It can just be a straight up serious fantasy slash science fiction type of thing that can be enjoyed for just the story alone. Just the fact that it's animation, it's almost just a side note. So, and that's always what's interested me in your interest in these animated movies, is because I've never really had a pull for them for one reason or another. So it is interesting. You can find some really nice gems in that catalog of very serious movies that just happen to be animated because of circumstances. It's just a way to. It's sort of like, I mean, one of my favorite animated movies is the Waltz with Bashir, that
Yeah,
Israeli movie that was nominated, I think, for like, yeah, it's
that's a
like a
good one.
really powerful movie, and so it's definitely doable to do something interesting with animation, and I think this movie proves it as well. But I felt a bit too slow at times, with not much of a payoff. The scenes were dealt with pretty well, but then other scenes, I definitely was more into the relationship of him and the girl
Yeah.
and the whole fairy tale allegory than the actual government intrigue. I wonder if the whole government secrecy thing and what's going on there. And we can get into it in the second half with spoilers, but yeah, I almost didn't get some of that stuff, and it's just maybe I even checked out at times while watching it. Yeah, that was just my general reaction to it.
Yeah.
I mean, similarly, I mean, I don't watch that many animated films. Yeah, Gil and I saw Waltz with Bashir when it came out in theaters, and to me that, I mean, if you're not going to make Toy Story, just me being an American, if you're going to make a really serious, dramatic animated movie, a dramatic movie, and it's just one of those things where I just can't picture this in live action. It has to be animated. I mean, Waltz with Bashir is definitely on the top of my list of those kinds of movies. This film, honestly, I thought the first few shots after the opening monologue and the opening montage, when it I actually did the thought just popped into my mind, like, yeah, this should be live action. And it's one of those things because the movie looks so beautiful. And I mean, the way that they did the lighting design looked really bold and artistic, but also believable and natural. I mean, it looks like something that could have been shot by Wally Pfister or
Yeah.
something. But to kind of jump off of something that Gil talked about, in that they did have these really two big set pieces, which were big on action and explosions and needing a lot of extras, needing all these crowds and all that stuff that's really expensive to do in live action, which is less expensive to do in animation. That the movie was so focused on the dialogue and the characters, and sometimes it did kind of almost fall into just a series of walk and talks, and then over the shoulder, so on and so forth. And the big thing that stuck out to me that bothered me is it looks gorgeous in the background, but the faces just lack any texture. Or, I mean, they have expression, but not that much. Like they're all the impressive stuff is happening behind them. There's a scene where they have this almost photorealistic twilight sky with clouds, and it's purple and it's beautiful, and dude's talking. It's a close up on him, and I can't take my eyes off of the sky. uh, So I mean, it's one of those things where I can see this, like if they had the money or the resources to do it, I would have easily said that this should be live action. But again, we're not living in a perfect world. But also, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of an American who never really got into anime, and I don't understand the culture as well as I should. So I mean that's just something that stuck out to me as just this nagging problem, and that so much of it is built around the faces, and the least interesting thing in any given image was the face.
Although it does seem like they do try very hard to make the faces distinct, because I felt like that could be a struggle too with animation, is that a lot of you can get confused with who's who with animation if they don't have very distinct faces. So there's definitely some effort there was made, but I think I might have missed that part, but I there's something to what Matt is saying, because they put a lot of effort into the background, into the design, the production design, but maybe the actual characters lacked a bit because of that, or at least it got overshadowed by it.
I think overshadowed is probably the better term. I mean, you see a lot of detail, a great deal of attention to detail and stuff like that in the design of things like automobiles and the firearms that they're using and their uniforms and things like that. So it's probably just more a stylistic thing. There's a it's kind of hard. I don't know. There's probably somebody who's like cataloged all of this somewhere, but you can look at a whole bunch of different anime and see all sorts of different levels of detail when it comes to like faces and bodies and things like that. And it's not super common, I would say, to find anime where they're just trying to draw people looking realistic. So there's that. I mean, like a great deal of anime at least tries to exaggerate a little bit, and this is like certainly not the norm. I would say. I mean, I do prefer this to a lot of other anime, but yeah, you're right. I mean, you compare something like that you see on the ground or something like that in some shot, and then it pans up to their face, and yeah, there's definitely a noticeable drop in the detail of the drawing.
Yeah, it's like the insert was taken with red, and the close up was taken with like a Canon XL2. Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
I will say, like, one thing that also I've noticed, like with the lighting, if we bring up those sort of details, I found it interesting. There's a couple of scenes where they do that trick, which again is more of a live action issue than an animated movie issue. It's a 3-minute scene, but the sun either goes up in the period of time of the scene or it goes down. So slowly from shot to shot,
Yeah.
it gets darker and darker or brighter and brighter. And it's a nice effect, but it mostly happens in live action movies because it takes a few hours to shoot a scene. So oftentimes the light evolves throughout the scene. But here they utilized it obviously on purpose because they control the sun, but they used it on purpose to make it more real or seem more like a live action movie, and to an effect because they can control it better. So you definitely see how slowly but surely things get dark as the scene.
Yeah.
And so I
Especially
found that interesting.
the very last scene is as the sun is barely peeking over the horizon.
Yeah, it's an interesting touch. It was noticeable, and I don't know if it's a good thing that I noticed it. I just thought it was interesting, and I think it was done for effect, for a certain type of mood. So again, there's a lot of good touches here as far as design. It's really well thought out. But yeah, but I'm not sure if maybe I lost or missed too much, and maybe that's why I was a bit confused. Like the movie was a bit too complex for its own good, which relates in a way to we were talking about Nolan films twice already. So maybe there's a little bit of that here in a way. But we can get into that for sure. yeah, I mean, do you guys want to do the ratings and move on to the second half?
I don't know how I'd rate the movie because when I think about anime, I usually compare it to other animated films. But yeah, I guess if I was just to think of this like on our normal, 0 to 10 or whatever, 1 to 10 scale kind of thing, I don't know. I'd probably put it at like a 7.
I guess I would put it at, I was thinking 6.5. So,
Yeah, I was debating between 6 and 7. I would probably fall somewhere like over a little bit over 6.5, mostly for certain touches that they have. That it's more than just an animated movie with a plot. So I'm leaning towards a 7, but definitely like a very just barely a 7 for sure. I think if I got more into it, it could have been a very solid 7. So should we get into the spoilers?
Sure.
Oh, well, what the hell is going on there? The one thing I'll say about as far as the beginning, the other thing that I thought about as I was watching it is I found it interesting that the first few minutes you don't know who you're supposed to follow. There's all these characters that come in and out of scenes, and you don't know you're supposed to relate to. And then those scary looking robots, with the soldiers with the outfits and the red eyes, like come out. And I don't know why. I was like, I bet you that like I'm gonna have to relate to one of those guys, because like they're the bad guys, but like it's gonna be something like kind of like Fahrenheit 451 type of thing, where like one of them is gonna. And then the moment that explosion happens with the kid, that's when I kind of knew. I was like, oh yeah, that's where this is going. Like he's gonna. But from there on, I started getting very, very confused about like who he is with, the whole wolf pack thing.
Yeah.
I was definitely lost like a little bit there towards the
Well, I
end.
can tell you that the first time I saw it, I was very confused by the whole. I kind of got at the very end when they reveal like that they're kind of setting a trap for those people. I kind of got like, okay, so this is that secret group within the Capitol Police that everybody's talking about, and this whole time he's been a part of it, and they're just revealing that to us. That much I understood. I still didn't quite get who is trying to kill who, kind of thing. But the second time I saw it, I got a lot more. I just was slightly confused about a few things. This time, after having seen it the third time, I really feel like I got a good grasp of all of it. And I don't know if this is ironic or not, but after seeing it and kind of getting what the whole story is, I kind of feel like it's a lot less complex than I ever thought it was to begin with. It's kind of it's unnecessarily complicated in certain aspects, but the overall story is very simple, I think.
It's as often the case for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, actually, if there's one thing that I'm kind of conflicted about when it comes to the movie is I mean, the second that he started reading uh, the copy of
Little Red Riding.
yeah, Red Riding Hood. Sorry, the second he started reading that, it just started going like plot point by plot point, and I was just okay. Now this is going to happen, and then it did. Okay, this is going to happen, and then it did, because we all know the story, and the movie kind of. I think it works better for movies to take lore from the past and repurpose it in a way that it's just kind of like you're not tipping your hat and saying, okay, yeah, we're doing this. We're just we're reading you the storybook, and yeah, the storybook is playing out in this world. It's a different world, but it's still the same story, and just like kind of telegraphing it.
Mm.
So like it was I mean, the one moment that I had where I was kind of like, oh, they might change this up was I was thinking maybe the bag that they had the girl holding in before our hero came in and rescued her and everything, that maybe that would be a real bomb, and she would just betray him, and there would be some kind of thing that goes on there. But no, that didn't happen. And yeah, so it is one of those things where I think if they took out all of the voiceover from the original story, I think it might have actually had a slightly better. It wouldn't, the ending wouldn't have been as strong, maybe, but at least I mean, the rest of the movie might have actually come to an ending where it's like, oh, okay, that's what they were doing. Just putting the Easter eggs in there of she's literally called a Red Riding Hood. The fact that when the guy gives her the bag at the beginning of the movie, he's saying, the package to bring to your mother, and so on and so forth. Like, just those little bits and pieces throughout the movie. I think most people could put that together. That it's this iconic story that everybody knows, and we're just doing it differently. That's that one thought that I had.
Yeah, I mean, I found that aspect of it interesting. That was a good spin to have a fairy tale that is gonna fit into the puzzle pieces, or at least it gives you some understanding, but it doesn't reveal everything in a way. It's you're in doubt. You still have doubt whether it's gonna follow through. The predictions of what the fairy tale entails.
Well,
There's a few.
it undermines itself multiple times throughout the story on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
the idea, so the girl betrays him and lies to him and is trying to capture him at one or two times throughout the story. So even though they're clearly portrayed as he's the wolf and she's the victim, like the Red Riding Hood, their roles keep switching.
Yeah, that's true, but I mean, at least my reading of it was she was. I mean, you can say that it's her goal in that she's being forced to do it. Basically, the government is the big wolf here that's feeding both
Yeah,
of the main characters lies.
yeah.
So I mean, I guess that's an interesting aspect to it.
Yeah,
But
so you said that she betrays him through where was the government was using her?
So yeah, that's kind of like the twist part that I only got on the second time through, but it's because they don't show it, they only say it. So that's why it's kind of like a little bit weird. But so I guess the thing is they reveal about halfway through the movie that she's not even the actual sister of the girl who died in the beginning, but she was one of those Red Riding Hood people. One of works with the sect, the terrorist or freedom fighter, however you want to view it, group, delivering munitions and explosives to their people and so on and so forth. And they captured her prior to the movie taking place. And so when the government that this is the confusing part, when the government that wants the people in the government, the conspirator people who want to get rid of the Capitol Police, they saw an opportunity because they see this guy who failed on his mission and almost got people killed in the process, got himself hurt, caused or allowed an explosion to go off in the sewer and so on and so forth. They saw this as an opportunity to take him down and to knock to make the whole Capitol Police look really bad in the process. So they had this girl who looked remarkably like the one that he had the encounter with, that blew herself up, and they put on this big ruse and told her, okay, well, like you're gonna, I don't remember what they told her. Maybe they reduced sentence or they're gonna let her go for free or whatever. But their goal was they got her to help them by enticing him and telling him this story that she's the sister and so on and so forth, so that they would basically be able to get this guy and show that all the failure of the whole police force and so on and so forth, and that he had been conspiring with one of the terrorists and just all that stuff. So you see in the scene where she calls him and says, "Meet me at that whatever it was. It looks like a natural history museum or something like that, whatever it was." And he sneaks over there because he knows it's a trap. And sure enough, she's waiting by the wolf exhibit, and there's like 15 dudes standing around her with guns because they're about to ambush him. So in that sense, like she's part of a group of people trying to take him down. And in that scene, she's hunting him technically.
Yeah, but then in the end it flips in a way, right? Because
He keeps flipping, yeah.
Because he then has discovered that he's part of the wolf pack. That's like the agency within the secret police thing.
Yeah, that special group or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, so basically it seems like everybody has, I mean, maybe that's the point of the movie, is everybody, I guess, takes care of themselves. So everybody has an agenda, and I guess the only way to control people is to deceive them in a way. Or at least, the government is supplying the weapons to the rebels so they can, in a way, show that as a show of power to keep the peace with the rest of the population. The whole thing is basically how humans are just messing with each other psychologically, just to have the upper hand, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, my take on it might be a little overly simplistic, but the way I see it, I think the whole point of the movie is just they go out of their way to show you both sides of this very violent conflict. You know, they're showing members of both sides. They're showing the violence. They're showing people getting hurt. They're showing people hurting others, and so on and so forth. And the whole time they're framing it as this like fairy tale that it's like, world famous fairy tale, that everybody knows. The Red Riding Hood and the wolf, Little Red Riding Hood. So there's the bad person and the good person, or the bad person and the victim, however you want to view it, right? And they keep changing that back and forth throughout the story of who's the bad person and who's the victim, depending on the moment in the story. And in the end, he doesn't save her or anything. The things, it's a pretty tragic ending, really. And the last shot, they're in a dump or something where it looks like a landfill or something like that, and it just ends on that book, the Little Red Riding Hood, and it's like in the dump, right? Like it's in a puddle or something.
Yeah.
And I just think it's all they're trying to say is that, like, don't look at complex things in life and try to see it as good versus bad, because especially if it involves people. They're just trying to say that there's like people on both sides of everything, and there's not always just a good guy and a bad guy. It's like more complicated than that. And so that the last shot is that fairy tale just thrown away.
Yeah, no, I think that's in line with what I was thinking that
I think so
was
too.
going on there. Yeah, so that basically everybody's got good intentions in a way, but also bad intentions, especially in the way they go about it.
Yeah.
And that ultimately fairy tales are just that. They're just fairy tales. Life itself is complex. And I guess
Yeah.
that's why the movie needed to be complex to get that
Yeah,
point across.
it's funny because in a way, I almost feel like all the government conspiracy stuff, almost like you said you were more interested in the relationship than that stuff. I feel like in a way, even though I guess it's necessary, it almost, like, all the conspiracy stuff almost kind of, confuses people and, or like takes away from what it's saying almost in a way. I don't know, maybe not.
I don't know if you can really have any of that without the political.
Right? I know, it's like you can't have it without it, but at the same time, I'm like, ugh, I don't know.
I think maybe that's slightly the point. I felt like the government part was almost very Kafkaesque in a way. It's a lot of bureaucratic stuff, a lot of people that don't trust each other or don't know what's going on, don't know if what they're doing is the right thing, and it's just a lot of bureaucratic stuff. And maybe it's just to show that life is a mess. Life is complicated and nobody really knows what they're doing. They're just going off of instincts and reasoning, and it's often flawed because we're human. And ultimately, we all just are taking care of number one. Like we're just making sure that we can survive. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know if you what else was the story there. I mean, with the girl and her sister that first like blew the bomb. Um, I guess both her and her sister were connected to the government, but why then would she blow up? I guess she needed to blow it up in order for it to injure some of the, like just to continue the conflict.
Talking about the
Uh,
beginning.
yeah, the beginning.
Well, for starters, they weren't actually sisters. They just looked like each other, and they were lying to
Oh,
him, saying that they were
that
sisters.
makes sense. So I definitely missed that
Yeah.
part. I thought
Yeah.
that maybe they're sisters and that, but they're both connected to the
Well,
whole
both of
scheme.
them were connected to the not to the government, but to the anti-government sect thing, the terrorists, if you will. And that girl in the very beginning sees herself cornered and decides, much like we see in real life with radical people, she decides she'd rather pull the string and kill herself and take out a couple of those fascist pigs with her rather than be taken captive.
Yeah, no, interesting. So I definitely missed the part about them not being sisters. I mean, I suspected some stuff, but I guess I didn't catch that when they
Yeah,
revealed it.
it's it's one of the most important revelations in the movie, and yet they don't show it. They only say it. It's like a moment of dialogue where these two government guys are talking, and they reveal that, and it's kind of like, wow.
Yeah, if I looked
Yeah,
down to take a note at that wrong moment, I would have missed it, and I would have no idea what the hell was going on for the rest of the movie.
yeah,
But
exactly. Because I can easily see myself just missing a dialogue piece there because it's subtitled and that we watched and just missed that altogether. So it is kind of crucial. But in a way, it kind of it makes it a bit of it's a bit of a Vertigo thing going on there too,
Yeah, a little
right?
bit.
That she dies and then he sees someone that looks like her and
Yeah,
then he gets obsessed with her and she leads him on, but eventually starts caring for him. There's a bit of a Vertigo thing going on there.
yeah, definitely. Did you see the oh so obvious visual reference to the third man?
No,
mhm.
I think I missed that.
Like the whole climax of the movie in the sewers. Like if you look at the whole thing with Orson Welles running from the police and whatever in the
Oh
sewer
yeah.
at the end of that movie, like the backgrounds and the set pieces that they're in are like some of them are almost shot for shot. Like at least I that's how when I saw the third man for the first time in the when you and I went to go see it at the New Beverly, I think, or wherever it was that we saw it. I just started seeing that. And I was like, holy crap, this is exactly the ending of Jin-Roh. Only, there's no machine guns.
Oh,
Hmm.
yeah, no, it's that's cool. I mean, I think that I just didn't make the connection because there's been many movies that there's chase scenes in a sewer, but I can see if they match like actual images and stuff. It makes sense. I mean they have the thing with Vertigo, they have the thing with Third Man, so I guess there's some fandom going on there of like appreciating classic live action movies and trying to bring those references to animation.
Yeah.
I think I get a pretty good sense of it now. Yeah, I don't know what it is about the movie that doesn't stand out to me, but I guess it's good to have these discussions too about these movies. I wonder what it is because I remember the first episode we are talking about Tenet, And we said that that movie might have had an issue where something in the secret sauce there just didn't gel all the way to make it function fully. And I wonder what it was here. If there is something, like, what would you have done slightly differently to make the movie better?
I don't know how I would have done this, but personally, I would have just tried to. Okay, so at the end of the movie, they realize that they reveal that he's known for a while that she's trying to entrap him, and he takes her down to the sewer, and he meets a bunch of his fellow, Wolf Brigade people, the special group within the group, and they ambush the hell out of all the people that are trying to ambush them. It's like a counter move thing, like a chess move. And he single-handedly annihilates all the people that are trying to, take them out, basically. I love the ending, and yet I feel like while it's happening, I don't know why that group of government people. I don't know what their motivation is. I get what their motivation is, but I don't know why. I don't know why they want to get rid of the Capitol Police. I don't know why it's beneficial to them, and I don't know. I don't know them as characters, other than the one he kills at the very end, who was a friend of his, who came up together with him. They talk about how they they were like rookies or something like that together in the academy or something like that. And there's some dialogue about him, but aside from him, I mean, he's representing a group of people, and it's just not, to me, that doesn't connect with the rest of the movie. I don't get why. I kind of get it, but I don't think it's well established. That's my problem with it.
I mean, when it comes to government, I mean, those power struggles all too often, and you're talking about relevance to today. I mean, you barely need to have much more of an explanation for why Democrats and Republicans would want to annihilate each other than just saying that, oh, there's a Democrat and a Republican. But vying for power. But yeah, I think that's something that probably could have been explored a bit more, at least to my mind. One thing that did take me out for at least a few moments was, I guess it's just one of those things where, whether it's real life or animation, you really can't. For some reason, you can't tell if a Japanese girl is 15 or 30.
Oh my gosh.
And, I mean, like at the beginning of their relationship, especially when it started to become a little bit flirtatious, I'm just like, what? Like, just making sure this girl's like 18, right?
Yeah, no, I can see that concern. Like, yeah, it's the whole pornographic angle thing. Or I guess in the case of Vertigo, it was like the whole necrophilia thing. Yeah, and have sex with a dead body or dead person.
Well, at least with necrophilia, the person who would be really upset about that experience would be is if the dead person turned out to not be dead. I mean, but
Let's not try to excuse necrophilia on this podcast.
yeah, yeah, we can edit that out.
Uh,
Oh, Matt.
yeah, no, it's interesting. It's definitely it was definitely a departure to look at a movie, an animated one it's not really about the animation. The animation is part of the design. It's a big part of what it plays to it, and it is one of the more impressive things and things to feast your eyes on. And then noticing those details like the background and change in colors and sun going down, stuff like that. But yeah, definitely it's just a different way to watch a movie, and I guess compounded by the fact that it's Japanese, so you have the language element too. So it was yeah, it was definitely interesting.
Yeah, I don't have a long list of them, but there are a few. I'm sure there's plenty of them that have been made, but there are a few really good anime that I movies that I like that I would say fit into this category, this very small subcategory of, there's nothing in it that couldn't be made live action. There's no element to the story that's otherworldly or magical and it's not even like a martial arts or samurai themed focused thing. It's just a story that is very similar to what a lot of other movies you'd see made live action, for the better or worse.
Yeah, and I mean, especially as technology is evolving, what we're saying you can do in animation versus what you can do in live action, those lines are really starting to blur, which is going to be
Well, let's say
too.
it's interesting you bring that up. I mean, this is let's say what you can do in live action without the aid of a computer.
Yeah.
Without CGI. I mean, this animated movie, is also stands out in the sense that 1999 is when it was made. So shortly after this, it started becoming very, very common for CGI to start being used in anime as well, especially for action scenes and stuff like that. So that's kind of just an interesting thing to point out, that it is a very beautiful movie that doesn't have any CGI in it at all.
Yeah, that's something to praise about it. Well, at least enjoy about it.